The cooperative model has long been the standard for creating fair and healthy living environments, successfully integrated work and rest. It is time for the people of Brockton to adopt this economic model and create a vibrant, thriving economy for all of us. What is a co-op?
I work here as an employee, but I also own one share of the company. I have a say in what happens with the company, which is awesome. We have a stake. We have skin in the game, as they say. It's a real business. We have goals to meet, but there's just this environment that we all love what we're doing, and it's very meaningful to us, and we all want it to work.
I have worked at large corporations where there's a huge hierarchy. It takes a lot of energy to operate in an environment like that. We put our energy towards our projects and our products.
Most other companies, I couldn't share in the decision making because I wouldn't have a vote. And at the end of the day, if the work I did produced profit, I wouldn't get to share in that because it would be going somewhere else. If I was concerned about what this was doing to the community, if I worked for another business, that wouldn't matter.
Cualquier empresario del exterior le dirá que lo más importante sea sacar el máximo beneficio. Nosotros decimos que la rentabilidad y el beneficio es importante para sostener a la empresa, pero que también es muy importante la generación de empleo.
We believe that it isn't good for anybody if somebody loses their job. If you lose your job, you haven't got money. If you haven't got money, you can't buy. If you can't buy, you can't buy our product.
El reparto de la riqueza más equitativa llega a más personas y por lo tanto más personas tienen la posibilidad de vivir más o menos bien.
La empresa es nuestra, pero somos trabajadores también, ¿no? Entonces, no hay como un jefe que pueda haber en otras empresas, ¿no? Todos somos nuestros jefes y todos tenemos que tirar para adelante con la empresa.
La gran mayoría de las personas se integre más, se envuelva más y por tanto podemos ser más competitivos y competir con la empresa más mejor del mundo. Es el futuro, entendemos, del mundo laboral también.
En aquella sociedad anónima era realmente la sensación de trabajar para otro, acabar la hora y a casa y se acabó. Esto es algo como que forma parte más de nuestra vida, ¿no? Porque tomamos parte desde la cabeza hasta la cola de la organización, ¿no?
Al final que tenemos trabajo es muy importante. Muchas veces hay empresas que son capitalistas, si hay un tipo de paro, pues vas a la calle. Habrá unos que salen mal y otros mejor, pero tienes trabajo, no te mandan a la calle.
Soy la segunda generación de una familia cooperativista. Las tres hermanas somos socias en favor. Lo han hecho la generación de mis padres, nos lo han dejado en herencia y tenemos que seguir trabajando para dejar esa herencia a nuestros hijos.
Companies in this era of capital and job mobility are not really anchored in place. They're not really loyal to the communities in which they reside. And so as companies come and go from our communities, it kind of rips the economic underpinnings.
people losing their homes, the foreclosure crisis here. It's just been devastating. They say you keep doing the same old thing, you get the same results. And people are looking for results right now that's going to make a difference in people's lives.
We give incentives to businesses and they come into a town and they say, well, we're going to move here, and we give them some money. And 10 years when the incentive's over, they say, well, what town should we move to next? This was a unique idea that people would own the business. So the business can't pick up and move unless every single person who worked there said, yeah, we'll move to Florida.
This is a business and we're a co-op. We all have to have a strong mentality that what Evergreen and Ohio Solar is trying to do is going to work for us in our community.
Oh yeah, I work this machine, that machine, that machine, that. I'll be all over the place. Everybody learns everything, so we kind of rotate and move around. Yeah, you have to. Yeah.
We own this place. That's an extra reason to go to work. You know, say like it's a house. If you rent it, not so much, but if you own it, you know, that's a big deal.
There are 7 cooperative principles. Principle number 1, voluntary and open membership. Cooperatives are voluntary organizations, open to all people able to use its services and willing to accept the responsibilities of membership without gender, social, racial, political, or religious discrimination. Principle number 2, democratic member control. Cooperatives are a democratic organization controlled by their members who actively participate in setting policies and making decisions. Principle number 3, members' economic participation. Members contribute equally to and democratically control the capital of the cooperative. This benefits members in proportion to the business they conduct with the cooperative rather than in proportion to the capital invested. Principle number 4, autonomy and independence. Cooperatives are autonomous, self-help organizations controlled by their members. If the co-op enters into agreements with other organizations or raises capital from external resources, it is done so based on terms that ensure democratic control by the members and maintains the cooperative's autonomy. Principle number 5, education, training, and information. Cooperatives provide education and training for members, elected representatives, managers, and employees so that they can contribute effectively to the development of their cooperative. Members also inform the general public about the nature and benefits of cooperatives. Principle number 6, cooperation among cooperatives. Cooperatives serve their members most effectively and strengthen the cooperative movement by working together through local, national, regional, and international structures. Principle number 7, concern for community. While focusing on member needs, cooperatives work for the sustainable development of communities through policies and programs accepted by the members. The butterfly effect.
Somos inmigrantes y sobrevivientes de violencia doméstica y estamos formando nuestra propia cooperativa de limpieza, con salarios justos y condiciones adecuadas de trabajo, que nos permita compartir con nuestra familia y atender sus necesidades.
El factor económico es parte del abuso.
y debe ser parte de la solución.
This co-op will be 100% owned and operated by immigrant Latina survivors. Help us to bring healing and economic justice together.
Merecemos una vida libre de violencia.
Metis Construction was founded in 2008 as an LLC. Prior to becoming a co-op, we were essentially a collection of subcontractors.
About 5 years ago, we all came together at the Rhine House project.
When we came here, this was an old building that was falling down and didn't seem to have much of a future.
This was going to be a much larger project. It kind of expanded as the project gained speed.
That was really the point at which we kind of achieved the critical mass to realize an idea that we had long been thinking about, which was the idea of reorganizing as a co-op.
That really started the fire that turned into Metis. We spent about 2 years figuring out how to do this.
A co-op is a worker-owned company. It's also worker-controlled. That means that on an everyday level, we operate like any other construction company. We have project managers that make decisions. But on the governance level, we are democratically governed, and all of our members participate in the decision-making process. Once the idea of becoming a worker-owned company was put on the table, it was wholeheartedly embraced.
There was like about 20 people in the company at the time. Everyone was offered ownership. Like 18 of us took it. So, I mean, that was pretty, it was pretty resounding. This was just at the end of the recession here. Everyone had a couple of pretty rough years.
In times of recession, of economic downturn, as a worker-owned company, we can all elect to take lower wages. So that gives us a lot more flexibility through difficult times.
With an independent contractor, all the responsibilities on yourself. And then, so with the co-op, we share the burden of the company.
Any small business owner knows what goes into running a small business. The lack of sleep, a lot of stress, and to be able to work with a group of people that you really like to work with and to share that risk and share that stress makes working through those problems and those crises actually something that draws everybody together and is really rewarding. From a business perspective, worker-owned companies tend to be substantially more profitable and more productive.
You could see with those people that converted to ownership, just a general sense of this is mine.
Being part of a co-op, I mean, I feel prideful about my work and I feel very responsible for the well-being of the company too at the same time.
There's a value in joining together with that common purpose.
If you go in for $100,000 hospital stay, you're gonna get it for $5,500.
Monday night, we had a members vote that is now made healthcare 100% for full-time employees as part of our Metis operating agreement.
For our worker owners, there's a lot of advantages that come with this. They participate, they share in the profits. The best way I can describe it is an experience of community, of being a part of something that's bigger than me, but connects me to the work we do in a way that I wasn't connected to it before. It's a pretty amazing experience to walk into work every day and feel like you're doing some small thing, towards making the world a more just and equitable place. And I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yo siempre he soñado con mi propio negocio, pero después de venir de un país donde el idioma es diferente, todo es muy diferente, la situación es mucho más complicada para mí. Entonces leí, me informé y se me dio la oportunidad de una cooperativa.
A Yard and a Half was founded in 1988. I came on board in 1996. And it's a good fit. That's why I never left.
Eileen, who's our former boss,
She really just found good people and then found a way to make them fit and really grew the company based on the strengths of the people that she had working for her.
At first, when we started, the idea wasn't so popular. You know, what will happen to us? That who's gonna be our new boss? Are they gonna keep us? Are they buying just the name of the company?
Democracy at Work Institute is a resource for both existing worker co-ops, but also for businesses considering co-op conversion. They're thinking about things like company culture and financing and what does the relationship need to be between the departing owner and the employees and all these sorts of things. One of the challenges, I think, for an owner thinking about co-op conversion is becoming conscious of all of the hats that they wear as a sole owner. So when the time came to sell the company to the employees, one of the things that she did was to sort of develop a management team where 5 of us started meeting with her on a regular basis, and she started being more transparent about what it takes to run a business.
Sí, a veces hay que informarse y leer, invertir tiempo extra, pero también al entender de cómo funciona una cooperativa, dan ánimo, da ganas de seguir.
We have 50% membership right now. We aim to make money on our jobs so that we can pass it along to people.
Since we became a co-op, we've been sharing more bonuses. Some people, they have purchased their own houses.
Cooperativa es una de las mejores opciones, porque tampoco se convierte en una forma de complacer caprichos de una sola persona, sino es tu negocio, pero es también poner a la gente en primer lugar.
More than good jobs.
More than good job.
Más que buenos trabajos.
Ownership.
Ownership.
Somos dueños.
Here's some contact information for individuals within Brockton Interfaith Community, as well as Corporate Fund of New England and Boston Center for Community Ownership. We've also provided some resources to you that will also be sent out via email through the Family Resource Center. We want to thank all organizations for sharing their various videos and expertise on cooperatives. And we also want to thank the Family Resource Center and Community Connections of Brockton. Special thanks to Massive Media LLC for putting this production together. We want to open it up for questions to our panel guests. Thank you.
All right. Wow, that was an amazing presentation. Thank you.
At this point, we'd like to open it up to for questions for the people who have joined us.
All righty. Let me see. With this format, what we're going to do, we're going to have people ask the questions through via chat. So does anyone have any questions? Well,
actually, Jensen, I think it's a small enough group that we can probably, if people have questions, we can probably just shout it out.
Okay, yeah, we can do that.
See, Ben just asked.
All right then. All right, so
Stacy and Carolyn, did you see the text from Ben Cole? He says, does your group have any experience with expiring used housing, cooperative ownership of public housing groups?
So I can say expiring use housing refers to a form of cooperative housing called limited equity housing cooperatives, and the expiring use refers to I believe this is not actually my area, so the answer is not really. But as much as I know about it, the expiring use is the expiration of a tax benefit that I think you get for creating low-income housing through a limited equity cooperative model. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong about that. And there's an effort. A lot of these are expiring after decades of being limited equity affordable housing, and there's a movement to convert them. I don't. That's the extent of my knowledge about it. I have not worked with one of those groups, and I don't. I'm not really sure who does. Do you know anything more about that, Carolyn?
I don't as much for expiring use, because often what happens is that those are picked up by nonprofit developers whose goal is to buy them up out of expiring use and who have a lot of experience with sort of navigating the tax incentives to be able to keep that affordable and to, unfortunately, to compete with like private equity. But I mean, we certainly work with cooperative housing and limited equity housing. And I mean, the thing that's most similar actually is, I think, resident-owned communities, which are when you have a for-profit sort of trailer park that is a big speculative market. And we work with groups of residents to help them organize and buy the land that their homes sit on to keep that permanently affordable. And there are certainly, similar efforts for apartment style housing as well. Right now, I think, Stacey, in Boston, there's the tenant option to purchase legislation going through, right?
I think it's being proposed, yeah.
Or proposed, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we can certainly talk more about housing cooperatives. The video was mostly about worker co-ops. We do work with all types of cooperatives. I mean, broadly, there's 3 types of cooperatives. There's consumer cooperatives, which I consider housing a type of consumer cooperative. That also includes a lot of food cooperatives, for example. Worker-owned cooperatives are the ones that were just highlighted in the video just now, where the employees of a company are the owners. And you can also have supplier cooperatives, which are really commonly found in agriculture, where farmers join together and create a cooperative to market their products. We do work with all kinds of cooperatives, both CFNE and BCCO, but at BCCO we do most of our work with worker-owned co-ops, like the co-op that BIC is working on right now in construction.
Ben, would you mind if I ask why that type of co-op is of particular interest to you? Is that an area that you work or you're looking to pursue?
No, I used to work in it when they first came about in the 1990s. I volunteered with, it was called the Glenview Commonwealth Group right in Brookline, Brockton. Of course, it was great interest, and it was just a wonderful way to keep the community together. Very diverse groups too. Trying to get them all to work together was a challenge. It was fulfilling. And I didn't know if it was because most of them came up, the 40-year notes at 3% to build came up in the 1990s. And I know the 40-year notes are now since passed, where I didn't know if any were being brought up, if your group was into it. I know there were several in the Brockton area.
Yeah, I think most of the limited equity co-ops that I know of are either coming about through joint purchase of existing property, trying to just take it out of speculation, or new development. But if expiring use was still available, it would certainly be an awesome thing to pursue. I don't know about the timing in terms of, my impression is the same as yours, that it's something where a lot of that stock has already been turned over.
Now, I may be pronouncing your name incorrectly. Charlize?
Yes, that's right.
Again, thank you for joining the discussion. Again, just curious about your interest in co-ops. Are any questions that we could answer for you?
No, I just I hadn't really really done any research or anything on co-op, so I wanted to join the workshop to hear more about it.
Sure. Dennis.
Scott and everyone for the presentation. Thank you. I have a son who's going to be 30 at some point, another year or so, and he has been talking about these kind of programs for years, trying to understand why capitalism has failed so many people for so long. And so many of the things that you have in the presentation there are just absolutely wonderful. And it made it much clearer to me of some of the things that he's been talking about. I would imagine that you have a difficult time having people appreciate this kind of a model. I'm guessing that politically speaking, people would like to brand this some kind of socialism or communism and try to shoot it down for those reasons. And yet I can't say enough how impressed I am with all of the benefits of these kind of co-ops, and very, very excited that there's one that you're working on in Brockton. How can nonprofit organizations who largely are supposed to be geared toward services to people, and we're only becoming more aware of how inequitable our systems are, of not only just delivery of services, but the basic economic stuff here. Suggestions to how we could be helpful as I guess agents of change or supporting these kind of co-ops, because they sound so wonderful.
Stacy, do you want to answer that? And then I want to go back to the previous point about sort of how to talk across the aisle about this.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, we work with community groups a lot. We work with grassroots organizations, membership organizations, activist organizations, and a lot, it's funny, through the kind of political development of the in the organization and the membership, people do often kind of arrive at this conclusion that helping their members to start cooperatives is really kind of addresses a fundamental need. And people arrive at that through a lot of different types of organizations. And so we form partnerships with these organizations all the time. I think the one thing that we really like to do is that, we like to form partnerships very early in the process. So I think that's what we've been doing with, that's one of the things that I enjoy about our relationship with FIC, is that they are still very early in the process of forming cooperative businesses, and we get to be in there from the beginning to kind of shape the direction of it, because we do have a lot of experience seeing not just what's successful, but also what can go wrong. There's a lot that can go wrong, and we have a lot of experience with that as well. So we can help steer a community organization in the right direction. And it's a special kind of, at the end of the day, a cooperative is a business. It's a for-profit business, and it's very difficult and complicated to operate a for-profit business in this, in this country, and probably in most countries. But there's a lot of regulations, tax implications. There's a lot of really serious things that people need to be aware of. So I think for the community organizations, what they really bring to the table is obviously the organizing of people, bringing people to the table and identifying groups of people who might want to start a cooperative. At BCCO, you know, we don't start co-ops without members. Everything starts from the members. And when we have a group of members in front of us who want to start a co-op, we can work with them and develop the business idea, put together the financing, get everything together. But we don't do that without people in front of us telling us that that's what they want. So the community organizations can find those people and get them, you know, get kind of a feeling of trust and solidarity and accountability among those members. And then the other thing that they can do, well, the second thing they can do is bring in somebody like us who can help with the technical knowledge about the business and help them, you know, help understand the business concepts. But the third thing is then to connect the co-op with a broader community. So there's a lot of ways that a broader community can support a cooperative. They can do it by just giving feedback in kind of a market research way, like let people know, would you buy a product for this price? What kinds of things are important to you when you're looking for a contractor? Just giving feedback the way that a customer would, kind of standing in for that role of the customer, but also providing financing when we go out and look for financing. There's a lot of innovative financing models where you can look to your community now. There's, you know, there's been an opening up of regulations of small business financing under the Jobs Act, which allows us to go out to the community and raise equity, actually. So we can ask members of your community to become equity investors in the cooperative, which is really, really key because we can use that equity to leverage loans and other investment from CF&E and other folks down the line. So those, I think, are probably the three biggest ways.
Dennis, I'd just like to add on a little bit to what Stacy said. Stacy is correct in all of that, of course. I think your observation is right. There are a lot of people who really don't understand the benefits, right? And these things all run on people. And so I think what I would very directly suggest is the BIC incubator team is always interested in opportunities to discuss what's possible with groups of people. So if there are groups or community organizations that have people that might benefit for these kinds of things, we would always be happy to come out and meet them virtually, and hopefully when we get to a point where we can meet in person again, talk about the same kinds of things that were shown in these videos, because we can't invent the co-ops ourselves. It requires people that are interested in a model like that have common interests with others. So that's really the fuel that runs sort of the standing up or the starting. So that's what I would say, and that's what I would offer up.
It seems to me that during these challenging times, that in everybody's need to get people back to work, that these might provide some innovative models of how to do it. And again, I'm not a fan of jumping into the political, but I do know there's politics in almost everything. And as head of a small United Way, we rely on businesses to generate a lot of our revenue in order to get the resources out to agencies. And I would think that a misunderstanding of what a co-op is might be viewed in some circles as almost a threat to businesses because of the positive nature of it. And yet I don't hear anything that should bother me if I were a business person thinking it's just a different business model, one that puts more of the benefit toward the workers as opposed to the profit motive that always seems to sit atop a lot of nonprofits, where even when they're doing well, the worker doesn't always do well. In fact, very often doesn't do well. But again, what you guys are presenting is just fascinating.
Yeah, another sort of big ask and opportunity in terms of outreach, particularly if you have relationships in the business community, is around co-op conversions. So both for businesses that might be struggling due to COVID, if you have a sole proprietor or somebody who, they're used to wearing that owner hat and carrying everything in here and not sharing it out. Now we're seeing a number of them coming forward and saying, okay, now's the time. I want to hand this over and engage my employees in a different way. And so, it can be a recovery strategy, but also just with the number of baby boomers who are going to be retiring in the next 10 years or so, having that conversation with business owners to say, hey, do your kids want it? Oh, they're getting a degree in electrical engineering. They don't want anything to do with the laundromat. How about your employees? And it actually, what we found is it resonates with a lot of people at a bunch of different levels because, some people are going to get excited about the opportunity to, address the racial wealth gap and give people more autonomy and more share in profits and keep jobs local. Other people are going to be like, oh, self-sufficiency. People are doing it for themselves. They're taking responsibility. They're not taking handout, that you can see where I fall politically, but we as a regional organization, we work with folks in rural Maine and the Adirondack region and stuff like that, for whom the idea of people taking responsibility for their jobs and having a greater sense of ownership in their workplace and knowing why they do what they do every day at work is really, really resonates. So I would. Don't shortchange yourself by thinking, oh, people aren't going to get this. Because by and large, when you talk to a business owner about this, they get it. They, usually entrepreneurs started the business because they love what they're doing. And they understand the idea of bringing other people into that, particularly when there's the potential of financial payout for them.
It's funny because you stepped across one of something I learned from another colleague of mine. Used to talk all the time about, well, the human services are meant to have people be self-sufficient. And I remember this gentleman who was the head of a pantry agency, organization that dealt with feeding the hungry and taking care of the homeless. And he turned to me and said, well, the issue isn't about self-sufficiency because none of us, if we're being honest, are self-sufficient. We're all interdependent on people. So it's not a question of you can do it all by yourself. The question is, can you learn what you need to be successful and to rely on people around you? And a co-op is just like this perfect definition of, hey, we rely on each other for decision making. We take care of each other through reasonable benefits and how these companies work. So I certainly can see a huge gain as long as people can hear clearly all the benefits and don't get all the wrong ideas about what these co-ops are.
I see Jamal's hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could I just say one more thing about? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jamal.
Yeah, Jamal, you have a question? You want something to say?
Yes. Good morning, everybody.
Thank you for joining us, by the way.
Thank you for allowing us. So I'm looking at this through a different lens. So my name is Jamal Gooding. I'm the executive director of PAC, People Affecting Community Change here in Brockton. And we do a lot of different initiatives. And I've been heard about the co-op, and I even had Scott get a little bit more in detail with me about it. That was an excellent question in regards to nonprofits. So part of what we do is the workforce development, and we find different ways of employing individuals that have any forms of barriers when it comes to transition. And I think this is a great model to get individuals involved, even youth. When we look at something like the construction business, there's not a construction company in Brockton, Mass. And so all of the construction that's being done, all of those dollars are going outside of our community and they're not being spent in our community. But I think Brockton is ripe for an opportunity to have such a co-op that deals with rehabbing and teaching individuals all types of vocational skills. So I'm wondering, what would be the approach for a nonprofit that is trying to utilize rebuilding the community, from food to construction to any different things, to get involved with existing projects or projects that we could initiate, and then those who are taking part in that be able to benefit from taking pride in something that they both built and own.
So one thing, Jamal, is that the construction co-op that members of BIC are working on are actually in the process of actively recruiting members to participate in the development process. It'll probably be at least a year before the co-op. There's a lot to do to create a new business, and the way that we like to do things is that we like to have all of the members of the cooperative participate in the startup process to really understand, you know, why we're doing things the way that we're doing, participate in the market research, participate in putting together the bylaws. So if you have members, we're especially looking for people who have relevant construction experience, who have worked on job sites before in residential remodeling, and especially people with a construction supervisor license would be very helpful. So there's outreach to folks like that. And the other thing I can say is that when you're looking for, you know, an industry that that might be good to encourage workers to start a new co-op. So we're part of, BCCO is one of the founding members of the UGMA project here in Boston. And one of the principles of UGMA was to kind of look to the community spending of the folks, you know, from the economically disenfranchised communities in Boston, in the Black and Brown communities, and look at what is the consumer spending there, and is there an opportunity there to say, you know, like all of these folks are spending money at X, Y, and Z business that nobody really has a good impression of. Maybe that's a good opportunity to divert that consumer spending into a locally owned business that would keep that any profits generated circulating in the economy. So that's one way to look at it, is the kind of demand side. And then the other side is just to say, you know, is to start with kind of an asset approach, which is to say, who are the folks that you're trying to benefit and where are they starting from? What are the skills that they already have, and what would be a good fit for them?
All righty. So we're going to wrap up in less than 5 minutes. And so this presentation is very informative. Our workshop, I apologize for the name of the workshop. It's actually Worker-Owned Economy. I accidentally said Brockton Interfaith Community, but it's actually Worker-Owned Economy Workshop. But before we wrap up, we like to get, does anyone have any questions, or one final question? Or does anyone have a final statement? Carolyn, Scott, or Stacy?
I just want to throw out, I put in the chat and I'll put it again if people are interested. There's a little clip in the video from Shift Change, which is a full-length documentary about worker co-ops. And Wellspring, which is a group that does co-op development out in Springfield, is actually screening it tonight. So if you want to register and get a little more in depth about just some examples, I think that's the most compelling thing, is just seeing co-ops at work and hearing from the worker owners. So I just offer that up.
Is there any way, I'm sorry, this is Jamal again, Jamal Gooding. Is there any way we can get access to the video that was shown in the beginning of the presentation? That was awesome, whoever put that together.
Yeah, very informative.
Sure, Jamal, happy to share that with you. And I want to thank the people who joined us for the session and the questions that people asked. Happy to talk further about any of this. A big part of what BIC is trying to do right now is reach out to the community to identify the people who could benefit from this concept and get the process going. So I really appreciate the questions. your suggestions, Dennis, in particular. So, and of course, thank you to the partners like Stacy and Carolyn and the others that helped put this all together.